Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the regular monthly meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, February 26, 2014 to order. If you'd all rise for the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
Chair Wiscombe.
Here.
Ferrara is not here. Heaton.
Here.
Longstreet.
Here.
Uribe. Intern Rodriguez.
Here.
And Casebeer is not yet present.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGill. Any changes to the agenda, Ms. Rapp?
No, Chair Wiscombe. Just one thing that I wanted to comment. Commissioner Casebeer is on his way. He is going to be late. So it's a good time for me to remind the Commission, because we have 7 members. A quorum for holding the meeting is to have 4 members. So it's because we only have 6 members right now, that would still be the same. One thing for you to keep in mind is that when the Commission is voting, it will take 4. You have the majority quorum has to be 4 votes, no matter whether there are 5 commissioners present or 6 or 7. So just to keep that in mind when you're making you're taking your actions. So with that, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. And we have no written communications. So I'm going to move on to public comment. We do have a member of the public here that wishes to speak. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. And we have Ms. Judith Smith here. Welcome, Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Let's celebrate the rain for today. I came to encourage you to put on the agenda, or whatever you need to do before it goes on the agenda, the petition that I presented to the City Council in, I believe, December, regarding off-leash hours from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning at Schofield Park and at Sheffield Reservoir. I would just say that the dog walkers there are really very savvy with their dogs. They're very well-behaved, not aggressive dogs at all, and they're usually the large dogs, and so they really need to be able to run free at some time of day. And we felt that 7:30 to 9:30 would give us plenty of time and would give everybody else who wants to walk without a dog or run without a dog or dogs on leash would have the rest of the day. So that would be, I would hope that we would get it on the agenda in March. We were expecting it today, but for whatever reason, it didn't get here. So is there anything I can do to help get it done?
Well, we're actually not allowed to comment on it, but it will be an upcoming item on the agenda. Ms. Rapp, yes.
Chair Wiscombe, in the interest of just sharing information, staff is planning for it to be on the March agenda. In fact, staff is working on the staff report right now.
Okay, thank you.
It does, in order to do this, we need to make sure that we have the broadest noticing to all of the neighborhoods that are directly involved and noticing to the park users. So a big part of that is making sure we have the time to do that. So we are working on it, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to speak. Okay.
And Chair Wiscombe,
yes.
If I may, I apologize. I missed the most important agenda change. Item number 4, which was Mr. Guzman's appeal of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show Advisory Committee decision. Mr. Guzman did notify our office on Monday morning that he would not be ready and asked to reschedule. So it's tabled until staff can work out a date with him.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And seeing as there's no other public comment, I'm going to close public comment, and we'll go on to the Youth Council report. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, good evening, members of Commission. I don't have much to report on except for we're working hard on our leadership conference, which will be April 11th. And I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you very much. And is that being held here?
We're looking to hold it at the Davis Center.
At the Davis Center, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and we'll move on to Commissioner Committee assignment reports. Let's just, Mr. Heaton, do you have anything to report? You don't?
I have nothing this
Other than a new addition to your family. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Ms. Longstreet?
I attended the Neighborhood Advisory Council with Ms. Uribe, and I'll let her report on. It was a productive meeting, I think. We have some new members, and there's a lot of discussion going on. But I'll let her move forward with some other things. And I also attended our Park Foundation meeting, and I think I'll let you talk about, since you're chairing the event, the biggest thing on the Park Foundation agenda is our upcoming event. So, thank you.
Just passing the buck left and right.
I'm passing the buck left and right.
Okay. Ms. Uribe?
Yeah, I don't have the notes from the Neighborhood Advisory Council. So if you have them on you,
No,
otherwise
I don't.
I can. Oh, okay. Otherwise, I can talk about there is a project coming up for funding a small amount of money, a pilot project for funding very small projects, and the committee is in the process of trying to come up with a way to let the community know and neighborhoods know how to best allocate this money and come up with a ranking system. But it's very much in a brainstorming session at this time.
Yeah, just to tag on to it, it's about $20,000 per year. The monies are for small projects to improve the neighborhoods. It's not to take the place of infrastructure issues. Some of the complications are working with the city attorney's office about private property issues and making sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But this year, since it is the first year of the rollout, there isn't a public application process yet. So the committee is looking at some projects that they will vet before they go in and have some demonstration projects to show to the neighborhood to help this process move along.
Is the committee a subset of the NAC? There's, in other words, some members, or
I think it's going to go through the whole NAC and staff. Staff has a large hand in guiding these, to make sure that legally we're covered liability-wise, that and that they don't step on some other projects. So the committee was each to give 3 projects. These are things like parkways, beautification of a parkway, cleaning up areas that are sort of a no man's land to be re-landscaped in a sustainable fashion. Those kinds of projects. So small but important in neighborhoods.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's very exciting. Sounds like you've got some good things coming up with NAC. So, okay. I attended, and Ms. Longstreet and Mr. Casebeer also attended the Oak Park ribbon cutting for the for the permeable paver parking lot project. So that was a great event to see how that worked. For those of you that don't know, there's been installations throughout the city of permeable paver parking lots that basically improve water quality and help the water get treated naturally before it gets before it ends up in the ocean or wherever, so or in our streams. So this was great, and the first one of these at Mackenzie Park was an award-winning project. So this is a continuation of the success of that, and the Creeks Department, I think, has done a great job in that. I also attended the City Council budget meeting, which was to allocate the one-time funds, $4+ million. I don't remember the exact amount, and I'm pleased that City Council approved some funding for Kids World and also approved some funding for the Cabrillo Ball Field. So that was a huge success for us. I also attended the Golf Advisory Committee meeting, and I'm pleased to report revenues are up. Sad to report that water costs are up. That's an issue at the course. It's been discussed at probably every Golf Advisory Committee meeting I've been to since I've back being the liaison. Players Improvement Fund, the first round was a real success. There are now signs up that show players where their money went. And there's actually a QR code, so you can take your phone and you can click directly on the code and go directly to the website where you can actually add your input about the improvements that have been done and what you suggest for future improvements. So, so they're interactive signs, and I think it's been a great success. And the GAC is now looking at other Player Improvement Fund projects at this point. I also attended the Park Foundation meeting, and we had a park fundraising meeting that Ms. Longstreet referred to. Our annual event, we're still planning for our annual event. It's coming up on Sunday, April 27th, Magic on the Urban Wine Trail Part 2, or second annual Magic on the Urban Wine Trail, and it's going to be at the Carrillo Rec Center. So it'll be in the afternoon. Hours will be determined at probably either 2 to 5 or 3 to 6 o'clock, and we hope to again have a sellout crowd. And moving it to the Carrillo Rec Center gives us an opportunity to have a larger crowd than we had last year at the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion, where we sold out the event. So we're all working hard on that, and there'll be more information about that, and your help as commissioners will be greatly appreciated when we move further along. And that ends those reports, and I see Council Member Kathy Murillo in the audience, and I'd like to welcome her. Thank you for coming. Okay, and we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Item number 1 is summary of council actions for information. Does anyone have any questions on those? Okay. And did you have any questions? No. Okay. And item number 2 is approval of minutes from the regular meeting of January 22nd, 2014. Does anyone have any questions or revisions or would like to make a motion?
I move to accept the consent calendar.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous? Great, okay.
Chair Wiscombe, if
Yes.
we might go back to commission and staff communications. I have
Oh,
a
I'm
few
sorry, I
things.
missed
That's
that
okay.
item. I
just-
ticked it off and totally went by it. Sorry about that.
I just had a few things you might be interested in, like budget, drought. But let me start with the good stuff first. We are very excited. The National Park and Recreation Association, NRPA, has kicked off a national campaign with Macy's. Macy's stores across the country, their employees have selected a park in their community. Each store selects a different park, And then Macy's will offer all of their customers the opportunity to make a donation March 7th through the 31st in their store, and Macy's will match those funds. So we are very excited because the Paseo Nuevo store selected Shoreline Park, and the La Cumbre store selected Mackenzie Park. So we are now in the process of working with the local Macy's to do a kickoff of that campaign. We want you to save all your money and do all your shopping after March 7th. So the campaign will have a tagline of "Show your love for Shoreline Park" or Mackenzie Park. It will be very catchy, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. But just a heads up, since your March meeting won't be until the end of the month. I did mention to you last month that staff was beginning to work on budget, so we are actually quite far along in that process. Just a reminder, the FY15 budget is the second year of a 2-year budget, which was actually adopted last year. So we do not anticipate a lot of changes. It is, however, the time when we review how all of our revenues are doing. And our revenues are a little down from what we expected this year. And so we're being more conservative next year. We are seeing a decrease in some areas that we're doing a lot of analysis to see what's going on. But all of that being said, we feel good about the budget that we're putting forth. That budget will go to City Council on April 22nd, and then the very next day will come to the Park Commission, and staff will give an overview of that budget and all of the changes. And then tentatively, staff will present their budget to City Council on May 19th. It's a Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. So those are some dates that we'll be talking more about. For the 2 new commissioners, I will set up a meeting for you in our office so we can kind of give you a little bit more background, answer your questions, so that when the budget comes to you at the commission, you'll have a little bit greater level of understanding and comfort. So we'll do that before the April meeting. And then I mentioned the drought. I want to thank all of you for doing your rain dances because the projections are still looking good. We had a little rain this afternoon. We're expecting more tonight with even more significant rains coming Friday and into the weekend, and we desperately need it. However, we know that this doesn't significantly change our state's challenge with drought conditions. The city of Santa Barbara has declared a stage 1 drought, as you know. That's a voluntary 20% water reduction. And each month, council has asked the water resources staff to come back and do a presentation on a monthly basis, giving updates on where we are with water for the community. The reduction in water and water conservation has impacts on our parks, on our golf course, and also our recreation facilities. So over the years, we have been actively involved in all measures to conserve water and use water as efficiently as possible. And we're grateful because we're seeing the payoff for all of that now, but it still means we're very concerned about the lack of water resources. We are in the process of developing some strategic plans. If the drought conditions continue and worsen, as is expected, then we will be moving forward with those plans. In particular, we'll be looking at our parks and how we maintain them. We'll be looking at our urban forest, the street trees, the park trees, what are our priorities. We'll also be looking at the golf course. Of the 3, the golf course has a real financial impact. When the condition of the golf course is not conducive to attracting golfers, then we have a revenue impact. So anyway, staff are working on developing those plans. And as we move forward, if we're going to implement those, we'll be bringing those to you for information. And we'll go from there. Meanwhile, we're all doing the happy dance. So with that, I would like to ask Jill Zachary to come up. She would like to give a brief report on one of the projects that you'll be hearing more about.
Good evening, good afternoon, commissioners. Just really quickly want to let you know that we are moving forward with the conceptual designs for the new pocket park to be located at Bath and Ortega Streets, the long-awaited pocket park. And we will be sending out an invitation to you to join the neighborhood meeting that we're scheduling for Thursday, March 13th. It'll be at the end of the workday because daylight savings happens the weekend before, so we'll get one more hour of daylight at the end of the day. We are preparing some conceptual ideas for that site. It's tiny. Imagine a small West downtown single-family home with very little backyard or front yard, and the site's even smaller than that. However, we're hoping that we can come up with a concept that fits the needs of the neighborhood. So we're going to have some options for people to look at and to generate the kind of discussion we'd like to have, and then we'll be bringing it to the commission at your meeting in March so that we can move forward with that design. So just wanted to give you a little update. We are working on a number of other capital projects, as you've sort of heard through emails, and you'll have more information as they further develop, and some exciting playground upgrades at Chase Pond Park, and we're hoping to put the finishing touches on that project in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be invited to sort of a soft unveiling of that. It's looking pretty good right now. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And just one additional comment. When I met with all of the new commissioners, I mentioned that they were joining the commission at an exciting time. And so we have not had the opportunity to have a lot of public involvement in designing new park spaces or redesigning existing park spaces. So I'm very pleased that you're getting the opportunity to be involved in that process and to work with people in the community for what their priorities are and what we're able to do. And this will happen both with this project, the Cabrillo Ballfield project. We're looking at the Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse. So it's a very exciting time, something that we haven't had a lot of opportunities with the commission because we've had so few projects other than maintenance going forward. So look forward to the future discussions.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. That's great. And thank you, Ms. Zachary, for that. That's been a long haul on the the pocket park. So that's very exciting about a neighborhood meeting. Okay, I think I'm back on track here. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 3, which is Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendations. And we're on to item 3A1, which is 1102 Luneta Plaza. And we do have someone here for public comment on that item. So I'm going to, I guess it's the applicant, actually. So what we'll do is we'll hear a presentation from Mr. Downey. Then we will ask the commission if they have any questions. And after questions, Ms. Welsh, you'll be able to come up and speak. And then after that, we will go back to the commission for discussion. Okay? Mr. Downey, welcome.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, before I get into this item, I just wanted to give a little background since we have new commissioners, and these are the first tree items. Want to go over the roles of the Street Advisory Committee and the Commission briefly, and talk about some of the issues you'll see, and how we deal with those issues. The Street Tree Advisory Committee's role in this decision process is to review applications for either street trees or setback trees. When they look at these applications, they consider all of the items in the municipal code that are outlined for them to consider, and they develop a recommendation as to whether they believe that the application should be approved, denied, or conditionally approved. That recommendation is in your packet for tonight. Then your role is somewhat the same. You review the considerations within the municipal code, and you're responsible to make a finding. If the removals are approved, you need to make a finding within one of those in the municipal code so that it fits with the rules that we've set forth. The rules are slightly different for street trees than they are setback trees. We have a responsibility to, the city has a responsibility not only to protect but to maintain city trees. And private trees, the city's not responsible to maintain, but we do have some policies set in place where we try to preserve as many of those as we can, and that's why this process is set for you to look at those. Frequently, the reasons that people will put on their application to remove the trees is because it's getting into the sewer lines or it's creating some other problems. Typically, those don't fit into the reasons in the municipal code unless there's so many of them that it just makes sense that the tree needs to be removed. The one thing, the comment I wanted to make about the sewer line, sewer lines exist 4 to 5 feet below the surface where they go under the trees. And 95% of all tree roots are in the top 3 feet of soil. Really, the only reason tree roots get into sewer lines, typically, there's some rare cases where that's not true, but typically is because the line begins to leak for whatever reason. And then the tree roots find that moisture and they follow it down to the pipes. So really the issue is the pipe leaking and not the tree getting into the lines. So it's not generally a reason that we would approve removals. There's a rare case when the sewer line runs so close to the tree and there aren't options to repair the sewer line by other means, and the severing of the roots to repair the line would destabilize the tree. In those cases, we would approve those removals because the tree would become dangerous. So I just wanted to give you some background in the process, and want to encourage you to ask questions if there's something you don't understand. So with that, I'll move into this item. Item 3A1 is 1102 Luneta Plaza. At 1102 Luneta Plaza, on the Luneta Plaza side of the property, there are 2 street trees, jacaranda street trees, that they're not thriving, they're not doing real great, but they're still alive and they're chugging along. The committee reviewed the reasons by the applicant. The applicant says that there was a sewage spill, and she suspects that one of the trees was involved in that. The sewer lateral line is actually much closer to the trees that you see in the background back here on her private property than it is to the street tree. It's much closer to the corner. It's more likely that her private trees are in the line than the street tree. There is a gas line that runs directly adjacent to the bigger of the 2 street trees. It's within a foot of the trunk. The other tree is much smaller. It's somewhat close to the driveway apron. The committee reviewed these trees and their condition and determined that there wasn't much possibility that these were going to develop nice big canopies like we hoped that they would. So their recommendation is to approve the 2 removals on the condition that there is 1 tree replaced in between the 2 existing trees. For Luneta Plaza, there are 3 designated street trees. There are 2 smaller eucalyptus, and then the Corymbia ficifolia is also designated. It gets larger than the other 2 trees, and actually a little larger than the jacarandas can. So the committee determined that that would provide ample canopy cover for this stretch, and their recommendation is to approve the 2 removals on the condition that the applicant plant 1 Corymbia ficifolia in a new location between the 2 trees.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. We do have Duke McPherson here from the Street Tree Advisory Committee, so I should just let the commissioners know if we have any specific questions. Duke was nice enough to come to the meeting and also speak. So I'm going to open it up for questions only from the commission, and then we will hear from the applicant. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Mr. Heaton.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just on the recommendation for replacement, is there a size of tree that's recommended?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, the size would be a minimum 15-gallon size tree.
Any other questions? Ms. Longstreet?
Are we going to see any interference with the overhead lines, with the size of the tree?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Longstreet, the overhead lines at this location are lower voltage lines. They can exist within the canopy of the tree. I don't see it being an issue with the canopy at all.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, fine. So we have Stephanie Welsh here to speak on the item. Ms. Welsh, if you'd like to come up. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Turn this on?
No, it's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the applicant, and I just mainly think the trees are really ugly, and I would like to replace them. And, you know, I mean, I've replaced the sewer main twice in the last 6 years. So I think that that tree has to have something to do with it. And I spent lots and lots of money on it. I know other people have presented their bills to the city to try and get some compensation. I have not done this, and I'm not planning to do it, but I just don't want to have to do it again. That's pretty much it.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate your coming to speak. Okay. We're going to close comment on that then and open it up to the commission for discussion. Anyone have or a motion?
I would just say, though, that I do believe if they were getting some water from a sewer line, they might look a little better. They just look like they haven't gotten any water at all in their growth pattern. But I would be willing to concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a... is that a motion?
I'll let other commissioners discuss first.
Yes.
Can I ask one more clarification on the? I believe that if we approve the removal and replacement, that would be at the applicant, the property owner's expense.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, when city trees are removed because they're a danger to public or they're dead, the city removes them at our expense. When an applicant comes and requests a removal and the trees aren't either dead or in a dangerous condition, that removal and any replacements are at the applicant's cost.
And to follow up, but we would then take over maintenance at that point that they were replaced?
Yes, we would.
Anyone else? Mr. Casebeer?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to remove is it one?
Two.
Two of the jacarandas with the replacement of a red flowering gum at 1102 Luneta Plaza.
Second.
Okay. Would you be willing to amend your motion to include what Mr. Heaton said, which was the minimum 15-gallon?
Certainly.
Okay, and seconder? Yes. Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously then. And we are moving on then to item 3B1, which is at 30 East Quinto Street. Mr. Downey?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 30 East Quinto Street has a large London plane tree. It's a rather small yard. The applicant is concerned about the size of the tree for the small lot. The fact that the tree has a lean, they're concerned that it might fall. They're concerned for the sewer line and the foundation, damage to that by the tree. They did provide evidence of damage to the gas line that has been repaired. Since the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, I contacted the property owner, and they indicated that they did have foundation damage. I advised them that it would be important to receive evidence of that, and they haven't gotten back to me. The Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed this application and looked at the tree in the location, and after some discussion, they determined that with some maintenance, a little bit of root pruning, and some pruning of the tops of the tree, the concerns for safety can be significantly decreased. Their recommendation is to deny the removal.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any public comment on this item, so I'll just open it up to the commission for questions and discussion. I personally would like to hear from Mr. McPherson on this item, if that's okay with everybody. I think it might help us. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
For the record, Duke McPherson is actually the chairman of the Street Tree Advisory Committee. Okay.
Thank you for having me, Madam Chair and commissioners. Do you have any questions? I have some comments, but go ahead and fire away. And by the way, it's nice to be a witness to the inner workings of the commission and working with our judgments. It's looking good.
Did you?
Well, I must say I did contact Mr. Downey today. It's a beautiful tree. It's a gorgeous tree. There's very little space in that front yard into the house, and that was my concern, was the space and the fact that we had no parkway there, basically, that'll accommodate a tree of any size. So if we take it out, we've got nothing, and
Really?
no way to put anything of any size in, it didn't seem to me. So, but it is a lot for that, 10 feet of front yard? What can happen?
I concur. The size is out of proportion, but it's a beautiful tree. It's a great contribution to what we call the urban forest. I have to weigh in on one thing. There was talk of an underground creek or something there contributing to its rapid growth. It's really the fact that it's way overwatered. There's water in the gutter there. That'll probably change with the new rulings. But I have to say that contributed significantly to its rapid and large growth. Just the topical watering, irrigation watering, probably every day. They could cut back on that, but the tree has gotten to its present size, and it won't get any smaller.
I'd just like to Did you, when Stack was out there, did you see evidence of any sort of foundation issues? Are we talking home foundation here? Is that
Chair Wiscombe and
not
Commissioners, the
fence
property owner
posts?
advises me that the home foundation, when he sets a ball on the floor in the corner near the tree, it rolls away from the tree. So he hasn't provided any evidence of that for us, but he did mention that to me.
Okay.
If I may weigh in on that also, my work as a consulting arborist is involved in this kind of thing all the time. And what I recommend is a exploratory trench excavation along the building foundations, and that really gives it away. If there's a big root diving in under an 18-inch deep foundation, yeah, that's big trouble. They can be severed if they're smaller roots without harming the tree, but I'd certainly advise that for this homeowner, very much so, to get really graphic evidence. A ball rolling on the floor I don't think is enough for me anyway.
Okay. Mr. Heaton, yes.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure who's best to answer, the committee
Just
or
throw 'em
Mr.
out
Downey,
there.
so I'll just
Yeah.
throw 'em, yeah. The first on the, I did get a chance to visit this site, all the tree sites, and from another angle, the tree looked straight on. It appeared to be quite a bit more lean to it than this picture shows. So I'm wondering if there is any risk with the way the tree's growing that will continue beyond the pruning that's being recommended, and then also to what extent are we recommending pruning is the resolution rather than removal?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, I'll take that one. There is a root at the base of the tree that's growing around the front side of the tree. That is a defect that can be known to cause problems. Recommendation would be to cut that, what's called girdling root, so that it doesn't continue to choke that side of the trunk, and do some size reduction pruning on the tree so that it's not quite so massive. That would be the recommendation. The lean, when a tree leans, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a problem. What you tend to look for is evidence that it has changed its position. That is stronger evidence of a real problem. In this particular case, it doesn't appear that the tree has changed its orientation anytime in the recent past. So it is less of a consideration for whether it's a problem or not.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? I'd just like to add, Ms. Longstreet mentioned it, but if you look across the street, there aren't any parkways, but if you look across the street in some of the neighbors' yards, there are also some big trees and quite a bit of foliage. So I'm thinking that on this particular street, that's kind of what's developed, and this is not an exception, but probably the norm. Maybe it's bigger than most of the other trees on the street, but there are some pretty significant, mass of foliage on the other side of the street too, behind fences and things like that. So, okay. Yes, Ms. Uribe. Yes.
I have a question. What is the threshold of evidence that a homeowner would have to provide about foundation damage and the time frame of that?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Uribe, the commission has looked at a number of cases where there was claims of foundation damage. In many of those cases, if they provided photographic evidence that the building was damaged in some way, in those cases the removal was approved. In the cases where they suspect damage or didn't provide enough damage, the commission at times has postponed a decision until the property owner had an opportunity to investigate further and provide such evidence. And in some cases where the foundation, they couldn't provide the foundation evidence, those applications were denied. So it really, there's been other cases as well where there was damage to more than one item: the sidewalk, the curb in the street, the driveway apron, roots up in their lawn. So the culmination of all those things, it made sense to approve the removal of those trees. So it's really up to you to determine if there's enough evidence here to support removal or not.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Longstreet?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to make a motion. One thing we see quite a bit, and this is not the motion yet, Carlos Rams, is a tree like this that hasn't had regular maintenance. And so it gets to a size and then it's like, take it out, where it really can be saved through some maintenance. And so I think we want to make sure that we err on the side of not taking a tree out simply because it hasn't been maintained over the years. The other thing I would say is that if they followed Mr. McPherson's advice about trenching and they found a huge issue, our arborist can go out on site and determine a dangerous tree or an issue like that. And I think those things, there are ways, if something becomes dangerous, if they have to sever a root to save the foundation, it becomes unstable, our arborist can make an on-the-spot decision about safety at that point. So I would make a motion to concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for 30 East Quinto to deny removal.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, seconded by Mr. Casebeer. Any further discussion? Mr. Heaton?
Yeah, thank you. If the property owner comes forward with the further evidence that's been requested on the foundation, I would be open to discussing it further, I guess, or would that be next level of appeal or something?
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Heaton, whatever the decision of this commission on the fate of this tree at this time, any decision is appealable to City Council. In addition to that, it's never a final answer. If conditions change and they find that the foundation was damaged, they certainly can reapply for the removal because there's new evidence to provide. So it's not a final decision at any time until the tree is removed.
Yes, Ms. Uribe.
I have a question. You mentioned that the homeowner didn't come to you about the foundation until more recently. Was that within a week, or was that with sufficient time to provide evidence?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Uribe, the call was on Monday of this week when I spoke to him.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're all unanimous on this? Okay, great. Good. Okay, we're moving on then to item 3B2, which is at 109 Oceano Avenue. Mr. Downey, we do have a speaker on this item, the applicant actually. So we'll do the same thing we did last time. Mr. Downey will give a presentation, questions from the commission, then the applicant can speak, and then we open it up to the commission for discussion.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, at 109 Oceano Avenue, on each side of the driveway apron exist a couple of large eucalyptus trees. I believe them to be white ironbark, but they're showing signs that they might have hybrid with something else. But we'll call them white ironbark for this item. The applicant is concerned for the safety of his tenants. The tree on the right in the photograph is lost a large limb. There's photographs of that in your packet, and it did damage to one of his tenants' cars. The tree, both trees are a bit in heavy, meaning the weight of the branches is way out on the ends. This is partly due to deferred maintenance. They certainly could both use trimming to reduce the length of branches. The committee looked at the application materials and these trees. The large branch that broke out was on the back side of the tree, away from this this perspective. But the committee ultimately decided that, short of removal of these trees and the community losing such a nice canopy, the trees could be pruned back, the one on the right significantly, so that the defect that occurred from the branch breaking out is cut out of the tree. It would reduce the top down and the in weight on the trees brought back in. Their determination was that through providing that maintenance, these trees could be preserved for quite a while longer. The recommendation is to deny removal.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Downey. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the commission for any questions for Mr. Downey or Mr. McPherson, who's here. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Heaton, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Downey, you mentioned, well, I have a couple questions, but I'll start with the level of pruning on this. Is it really a significant pruning, or would it fall, I guess, in the standards of good forestry practice or the guidelines that are called out? I believe it's the Institute pruning.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, the pruning that would be necessary would be enough that it would be a violation of the code if it wasn't approved. However, the code recognizes that there are times at which, in order to preserve the tree, you have to prune it a little harder. And this is one of those cases. So the top of the tree would be reduced significantly. It would dramatically change the shape, the form of that tree. It would be shorter and not so upright looking. So would it alter the natural character of the tree? Yes, but it would be necessary in order to preserve the trees. And in that case, it outweighs the loss of the tree.
Did you have another question?
I do.
Go ahead.
I think you answered a few. So if anyone else has any, I can come back.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Downey? Okay. Okay, I am going to then move to the applicant who's here to speak, Mr. Gary Sermigian. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon. The comments I actually wanted to add actually go along with your question. I've been in contact with Economy Tree in regards to this. They are the ones that actually cleaned it up when that gigantic branch fell. And they had said that in order to prune this tree, it's going to require more than the pruning standards, which they said is 25% of the canopy. So their fears, along with mine, is that if you prune it that much, it could possibly topple over and mess with the tree's equilibrium, because that big branch on the the backside did fall off. So they are concerned about that, and you can kind of tell how it is leaning. There are some power lines on the other side of the street, and obviously many cars that park there. So my number one fear is health and safety of cars, people walking by. There's a lot of people and bikes in this area, so I'm concerned that there'll be another windstorm that could potentially cause additional branches to fall. I used to live at this home and had to deal with this tree often, and there were often lots of leaves there. branches fell. You can actually see that the driveway is actually very narrow with these trees, so sometimes it's hard for like a big SUV to actually fit through it. And with all these leaves, a lot of times the driveway is covered, and there's been some time people think it's a parking spot, and I couldn't even get out. So there's many issues along here. But my number one concern is, of it toppling over, or branches, or someone getting hurt. Because my tenant does have a 2-year-old child, so they're concerned about that too. I also wanted to add that these are out of character for the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood, the entire street has no trees that are eucalyptus. They're all pretty much palm. I believe there was another pine. But my thoughts were putting some palms there to kind of coordinate with the rest of the neighborhood. The neighbors just to the left actually have some queen palms. And I thought maintenance-wise, that'd be a lot easier and kind of eliminate all the risks of big branches falling down. So that's kind of what I wanted to add, other than the letter that I had written.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for coming. Okay, so we're going to close public comment, and I'm going to open it back up to the commission for discussion and any further questions. Anyone have anything? Mr. Heaton.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the comment. Mr. Downey, would that significant pruning cause any risk to the tree, to the integrity of the tree, or the life, or the future of the tree?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, whenever you prune a tree beyond the recommended amount, which industry standard is about 25%, you're taking away some of the lungs and the stomach for the tree. This is how the tree breathes and eats, through its leaves. So when you cut a little farther than the 25%, the tree tends to respond with a reactive growth to replace what it has lost, because it wants to eat and breathe. So will the tree respond to the pruning? Yes, it will. It simply requires a little additional maintenance to manage that new growth. It will not in any way unbalance the tree. The tree, as in the earlier case, this tree does not show any signs that it has recently shifted position. The end weight reduction, all of these cuts that we're recommending that they do to these trees will actually help the trees survive in place much longer. We can never say it's going to make the tree safe. Sometimes there's hidden defects that you can't see, but you have to manage for what you can see. And the belief is through pruning that these trees can remain in place for a while longer and be preserved and remain an asset to the community.
Thank you. Could you also comment on the character of the neighborhood, and perhaps what trees would be suggested for that neighborhood?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, that's a subjective question. It really is up to the interpretation of many people what they feel might be right for a neighborhood. The municipal code does help us out here. There's a provision in there that says that the character of the immediate neighborhood will not be materially affected by the removal of the trees. It was the committee's opinion that pruning the trees would be less loss to the community than removal for that provision. So it really is a subjective question, what fits and what doesn't fit. It's my belief that every tree has value, and it just needs to be determined whether it fits in that one situation or not.
Thanks. I guess I should have further clarified. Probably, aren't there certain trees that would be recommended if, say, we were going to be planting street trees? And I was wondering what those are.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, this tree is a setback tree. When we have street trees being planted, they must be planted with a designated tree for that street. And I apologize, I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But there aren't very many street trees on this street right now. the requirement of trees in a setback is really up to the homeowner, what they'd like to do there. It really becomes incumbent upon whether or not these trees are approved for removal. What he replaces it with, we typically do not dictate what they plant on their side. At times, the commission has approved a removal on the condition that a tree with a certain size canopy replaces it, but we typically do not designate a specific species unless the applicant says that they want to plant that species.
Thank you.
Not on. Mr. Casebeer, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I feel for the applicant, and I am a homeowner and I have some large trees on my property, and it's incumbent upon me to maintain my trees. And this tree is a setback tree. And so whose responsibility, Mr. Downey, the question to you, whose responsibility is it to maintain a setback tree like this one?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Casebeer, a tree within a setback is on private property, and it's their responsibility to maintain the tree.
Homeowner's responsibility.
The owner of the property, yes.
Okay. And so that's one item. The other item is that it sounds, this is the major street tree, large tree on that street. And if we removed it, it would diminish the canopy, the shade, bird places. It would be a huge loss to the community. So I will support staff's recommendation to deny the removal.
Okay, are you making a motion, Mr. Casebeer? No, okay, yeah. Well, let Ms. Longstreet speak first.
My concern is that the loss of these trees, there's no landscaping in this area at all. If these trees come out, there's nothing there in that area. There'd be more consideration for this if it was part of some sort of plan, a re-landscaping plan, if it had something. But with those gone, it's going to be pretty barren, and we have no replacement to go in there. And in my work life, I manage a very large eucalyptus tree that requires regular maintenance. It had some limb losses until we started regularly maintaining it, and we've not, in the 8 years I've been there, we haven't lost a limb because the weight's taken off the end every other year. So I can't, I would encourage the applicant, if there's going to be some redevelopment in this process, to come with a plan that re-landscapes that front or does something to make that area, there be a reason for removal. But right now, we can't sacrifice the trees for no community benefit and no benefit even to the people who live there, I think.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Uribe?
I have a comment, and in the letter, and as was mentioned in the comment, it says that there are leaves, there's enough leaves and sap that make the driveway non-visible to people, and so it gets blocked. But I wonder how long something goes without sweeping so that the driveway doesn't look like a driveway anymore. So I wonder how often the trees and what comes off of it is maintained, and if there are suggestions that this can be handled by maintaining it better, then I'm in support of denying the application as well.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Uribe, again, the maintenance of this tree is the responsibility of the property owner. If the concern is that it drops so many leaves that it's blocking access to building, they have a responsibility to take care of that through cleaning those leaves. This is no different than anybody else that has a large tree, so it's their responsibility.
Okay. I also, just to weigh in, support Stack's recommendation to deny the removal of the trees. I truly hope that they can be trimmed in a fashion that makes them safe and also keeps them around for a long time. I think the character of the neighborhood with removal of these trees would be materially affected. So that's my 2 cents. Mr. Heaton.
Thank you. Mr. Downey, you had said that there were some recommendations on pruning. How detailed of guidance is that something that you would provide to the property owner or have in this case?
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Heaton, I would be happy to work with the property owner and his contractor to discuss exactly what the committee was talking about and ways that they can prune the tree to reduce the risks on this tree. I'd be happy to work with them on that at their leisure.
Okay. Did you? Ms.
I'll make a
Longstreet?
motion. I move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation at 109 Oceana Avenue for denial of the removal of the eucalyptus, 2 eucalyptus.
Do I have a second? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Heaton?
Yeah, thank you. If we deny this, are we also at the same time approving the pruning, which was indicated would actually need its own approval in another section of the code? Or is that a separate process that the applicant's going to have to
We
follow
don't deal with pruning at the commission level. Mr. Downey, you can
Chair
answer it if
Wiscombe
you
and
want.
Commissioner Heaton, there are exemptions in the municipal code that allow for this kind of work to be done. It does allow for staff, park staff, to determine it's necessary. It does require a permit. Our permits are free. We would issue the no-fee permit for them to do this pruning to save these trees.
Thanks. So you believe that you could make the determine it consistent with the practices of the American National Standards and give them that sign-off?
Commissioner Heaton, yes. The permit would specifically outline what they would be able to do.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second, and all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Downey, and thank you, Mr. McPherson, for coming. And with no further... Oh, okay. And, well, I know Tim does that, but you are, just so you know, before you walk out, Mr. Smigian, you do have a period of time to appeal this to City Council, and Mr. Downey will go over that with you if you wish to appeal it. Okay. Okay. Okay, with no further business, we are adjourning the meeting. Thank you all.